Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, His church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me on today's episode. I've got Matt Wallin, who currently lives with his wife and three children. They are from Rome, Georgia. Matt serves as the deacon at the Oak Hill Church of Christ. He has been working for House to House, Heart to Heart for the past 19 years and currently oversees productions and promotions for that magazine. Matt has a Bible degree as well as a business degree from Faulkner University and a master's degree in management from Troy University. After graduating Faulkner, I believe Matt went off and lived in China doing some mission work, which is where I think he fell in love with ministry for the first time. And in his spare time, Matt runs a business, and he flips houses and a lot of other stuff. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we had just a brief conversation there right before we started about the different entrepreneurial stuff that you've got going on, and fireworks, some fireworks stands, and I have a horrible story about fireworks.
Those are the best kind. Let's hear it.
I don't know if we want to hear it. Okay. Basically, I caught our house on fire when I lived in Detroit, Michigan. Those little firecrackers you light, and they start spinning really fast and changing colors, and one of them went, took off and landed in a bush that was super dry, and the bush caught on fire. And my mom was having a Tupperware party downstairs. My dad is literally, he's sitting watching the Detroit Tigers on the television with the window in front or back behind the television, and then the bush is outside of that window. So it goes up in smoke, and he's still watching. And I'm running back and forth in the house, trying to get water, glasses of water and trying to put the fire out, and it's growing and bigger. And then, the part of the roof catches on fire, and he's still watching that ball game. He finally sees, when the window begins to crack from the heat. He's like, "Oh, we have an issue here." So
pretty fixated on Alan Trammell, was he?
Hey, Alan Trammell, that was back in the day.
He almost had his own burning bush moment.
Almost.
I have a very similar story. We had a long driveway in the country, and we had one of those. So we had shut off all our fireworks. We poured out the bucket of water because we're responsible, right. And then we found one. Shoot that one off. That's the one that caught the ditch and the embankment on fire, and we just poured out the water. So it was boys, and we put it out as maybe only boys can.
Okay, we'll I follow you.
Yeah, so those things are tricky. You got to be careful with them. We both had problems with one of them, the little color changing flying thingy. So yeah, lesson learned for me.
Right. Okay, so you're married for how long now?
Oh, come on, don't do that. Carry the one. I think it's 17 years.
17 years. And your wife, Ashley, I just met her a little bit ago. You've got two twin daughters.
That's right.
Age 9, and then another daughter, age 6, all girls.
Yeah, all girls.
Man.
Girl dad.
You 4 girls in the house.
Yeah.
Are you just happy to be up here with just guys right now?
Oh, man, I'm loving it. This man cave we've got in here. Oh, there's a line over there. I kid sometimes when I speak, I'll drink water, and I say, I'll talk more in this hour than I talk in a month at home. And it's true. The car ride, I just listen a lot.
Yeah. The females are very communicative, much more than men. We don't tend to talk as much. Yeah. So this is going to be a really important question. And if you don't answer correctly, we may just shut this podcast down right now.
That's fair.
I've done a little bit of stalking on you, so I know some of your likes and dislikes, and I know that you're a big basketball fan.
That's right. Is this gonna be the greatest question? Who's the greatest?
Is it Jordan or LeBron?
All right, so I want to put a qualifier on it. I think Jordan is the greatest, but I think LeBron has been greater, longer in some way. So if you have, who is it? Jordan for me.
Okay.
But LeBron has been greater longer. I mean, from high school to still winning an Olympic gold medal at 40.
Yeah.
And number 1 in points by far, and going to probably be top 3 in assists, top 20 in rebounds, and everything. So.
Okay.
But I go Jordan if I had to.
Yeah. So if we put Jordan back in the game today at his prime, playing against LeBron, you think that Jordan's going to mop the floor with LeBron? Can LeBron handle the primetime Michael Jordan?
I still think Jordan would be better.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd mop the floor with him though, but I think he'd be better.
Okay. All right. I'm Yeah, I have a hard time giving it up to anybody except Jordan, just because. Well, maybe because my generation. I was just like,
how old are you?
He was the guy. 50. Going to be 54 here.
Okay,
real
I'm
soon.
41, so I was right behind. I was watching it early though, so like my two favorite players are Barkley and Stockton.
Okay,
and so he was always beating them. So I kind of hated Jordan just because I was like, you jerk! All my favorite players don't win because of you. So.
Yeah. And then I've been really impressed with the Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, for sure.
Phenomenon coming on pretty strong. She seems to be a pretty strong player. She's definitely done stuff for the girls league, women's NBA. Okay. So you went to China after you graduated Faulkner. So you're a young man at this point, right? 21, 22, somewhere in that age
22,
range.
I think.
And didn't really know at that point, what do I really want to do with my life?
Yeah.
Who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be doing? Mm-hmm. And so you find yourself in China. And maybe the mission bug kind of hits you at that point, and you have some bigger life perspectives at that point.
Yeah,
maybe.
So I graduated Faulkner, and I think college students still do this. They said, I got a degree. Mm-hmm. The American dream, I'm ready. Where's the world? And the world's like indefinitely indifferent, silencing indifference is what I would say they responded to my graduation with. So I'm like, oh shoot, I thought I was going to get a job real quick. Yeah. So I put my resume out there, and the first job offer I get is from a furniture company. And I'm like, well, I didn't grow up as a little boy dreaming of managing a furniture company, but I have no job, so I'm going to take it. So I did that for about 6 months, and was rising in the corporate world of chain furniture stores, I guess, but hated it. We had to work about 65, 70 hours a week, so I was making good money. I'd bought a house. I closed on it the same week I graduated. I rented the room to friends, so they were making my mortgage payment. So I was doing pretty well, but I just hated it, and I was like, can't be my life, Yeah. So I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm just going to quit. And I had a friend who was doing mission work in China. He was teaching conversational English as a front for mission work.
Okay.
And so he said, hey, come live with me. I've got a nice apartment, extra bedroom. And I'm like, okay, I think I will. He's like, oh, yeah, right. I'm like, no, man, if you're serious, I'll just come.
Yeah.
And so I moved, and when I got there, I had savings from saving. I was working so much I couldn't spend it. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't even get a job while I was there. I just lived off my savings. And the dollar was like 8 to 1 there at the time. So everything was super cheap.
Yeah.
So I just kind of vacationed all over the country, and then I mainly spent my time with him. He would get students interested in the Bible, and then we would teach them. And when they were converted, I would spend time with them throughout the week as like a new converts type thing and some discipleship. Mm-hmm. And I just loved it. And the Americans that were there, we would get together a couple times a week, and we would pray, and we would talk about the people we were studying with. And I was like, I've got to figure out a way to do this every day, all day. But I didn't really want to be a full-time preacher because at the time I stunk at it. And we'll see tonight if I'm any better at it or not, but wasn't great at it. And I didn't want to do the in-between Sunday stuff, the political stuff, and the stuff that's, come on, we shouldn't have to deal with this,
Yeah.
And you're going to have some of that in ministry and as a Christian anyway, so I know that. But I just thought, I don't know if pulpit minister is the right thing for me. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm sitting in China thinking, I got to do ministry, and I don't know what to do. And so I looked at Faulkner's website for a job, which I had never done. I had tried before, and it was basically like a 404 file not found. They didn't list stuff.
Yeah.
But they had something.
Yeah.
And it was house to house. And they had not before and have not since listed a job opening anywhere. It's just word of mouth or internships or whatever. Yeah. So it was like that one day I looked is probably the one shot I had. Wow. So it felt very providential.
Right.
And so I interviewed over the phone and Skype and stuff at the time when I was there. And then my best friend got married. So I only ended up being there a few months. He got married and asked me to come home and do the wedding.
Okay.
And so I came home, and I kind of had a moment to decide, like, China, the people there were kind of expecting me to come back, and I wanted to. Yeah. But then I had this opportunity with House to House to stay here. It was kind of a crossroads, and but I stayed with House to House, and I think that's been the right decision.
Okay, so tell me a little bit of what is House to House, Heart to Heart for those that are listening and don't know anything about that.
Yeah, we started in 94, so this is our 30th year, but it's just an evangelistic effort. So one of my coworkers, Alan Webster, had an idea that what if we took the church bulletin and instead of praying for Sister So-and-so's cousin's hairdresser in it and just putting an article that we get that's for us, what if we mailed it to the community and we replaced that with evangelistic articles? And so he started doing that for his congregation, and they had visitors and they had responses. And so area churches said, we want to send that to our neighbors, but not with your information on it, with ours. And so he figured out how to do that. And then we have grown from one church to a handful to now we've worked with about 4,500 churches of Christ all throughout the world. We worked with churches in every country in D.C., every state in D.C. and 125 countries. But so basically what we do, we produce an 8-page magazine, and we customize it on the front and back for the local Church of Christ and mail it to their neighbors. So like our July issue we went to 2.2 million homes just in the month of July in this country.
Wow.
And so we're averaging almost 4 baptisms a day in this country right now between our School of Evangelism, our mailing, our social media studies. And so anytime somebody's like, oh, nobody wants the truth anymore. I mean, you guys know you're expecting 115 college students in next week. Yeah. It just drives me crazy because I'm like, let me give you the cell phone number of 20 people that have more studies than they can keep up with.
Yeah.
And so House to House has proven to be that way, 4 baptisms a day. And so every day somebody is messaging me on Facebook or emailing me or texting me, and almost all my coworkers are experiencing the same thing. So people are very receptive right now, whether it's through the mail or just personal invitations, anything like that. So that's why I stay doing it.
Right.
Because I'm sure you have job offers. I've had job offers. But what can I be a part of that's producing 4 baptisms a day?
Right.
And builds me up? Nothing. So why would I do anything else?
Yeah. So as far as resources are concerned, house to house, heart to heart, like what are you guys, and it's because it sounds like it's very service oriented. Like you guys are distributing and you're pushing and you're a resource for a lot of other churches. Is there something feeding into you guys that is a resource that is helping you all continue to do what you do?
Yeah, so we have about 20 of us there now, and we were a magazine for about 25 of our 30 years was about all we were. So, but about 5 years ago, we hired a guy who has baptized over 500 in his life. He's been only at 3 or 4 churches, and they've all either doubled or tripled. And when the first week I was at House to House, I was like, there's 5 or 6 things we're not doing that we should, and one of them was having a guy go train churches to evangelize. Just as a normal, regular, run-of-the-mill member, like I am, where I'm at, what can I do to be evangelistic even though I'm not in the pulpit? And sometimes that's an advantage even, as you know. So we hired him, and now he takes a traveling school of evangelism. He'll go for a week to churches. So he'll do about 52 seminars a year where he will give you like tried and true, 100% tested things that you can do to just take a normal member like I am and get them evangelistic. So we have the mailings, we have the School of Evangelism, we have preachers all over the Brotherhood producing videos for us that we're putting out. Charles Cochran, who preaches at Eastridge, his TV show, we produce that now, and we film that in our studio. And anybody in the area that wants to use the studio can reach out to us, and we don't charge for that. We just work them in somewhere and help them out and things. We are also producing tracts and Bible correspondence courses and personal Bible study material. And so we've gone from just a magazine to really something that can be very helpful just completely to a church. And I always like to mention this too. Last year and this year, the majority of our male employees have baptized at least one person. So I baptized 5 in the past probably year and a half, and I've got several I'm studying with. And I just point that out to say it's very important if you're going to be at House to House that you're practicing what you preach. Yeah. And so we want everybody that's there to be evangelistic, you know. So when we talk to churches, it's not just, oh, here's something you should try, but here's the way in which you should try it. Here's how you can tweak it. Here's how you can make it work because we're doing it at home, and versus here's something in theory, or just throw something out and see what happens.
Yeah. So what you're doing is actually working, and people need to hear that. And what you're saying too here is, churches are on decline. And I'm not talking specifically churches of Christ. I'm talking about just from a religious standpoint. Attendance is down. There's, if you look at the statistics, the amount of churches that close their doors every day is unlike anything that we've seen in current history, or past history. Current history, that's kind of oxymoron. Mm-hmm. So honing in on the churches of Christ, and I know going back a few years ago, there's a lot of upset the apple cart, if you would, with COVID, and that hurt a lot of churches. What's the solution to getting us back on track and having, instead of just a flatlining of, we may not be losing a lot, although, again, if depending on what research and statistics, we are in decline. The churches of Christ are losing members. And then some, it's just basically we've plateaued and we're staying there, as opposed to going back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we were gaining members yearly at a pretty rapid. How do we get back to that? I guess what I'm asking is, what's happened now that we're not producing like we used to produce, and what do we need to be doing in order to get back to where we were to be adding souls to the church?
Yeah, I think some of the ways we do things, there's not necessarily anything wrong with them, but sometimes maybe there's not anything right with them either. And so I know, like, you think back early to the church in this country, like, why do we have buildings? Well, because a member said, you can have my land and we'll all chip in and we'll pay for it. And who would preach there? The members would, or you would have circuit preachers who would come through and teach certain things. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with necessarily having a pulpit guy. But the problem that can come with that in some places is members say, we got a guy for that.
Yeah.
When you have a church full of people who say we got a guy for that versus a church full of people who say, more like the Ephesians 3 and 4, the leadership equips the saints for the work of ministry. Yeah. I'm a minister. I love the verse. Jesus says he was about 30 when he began his ministry, and then the idea is, how old were you when you began yours? But to every member. Yeah. So I think if you can get churches to remember that the preacher doesn't do this because we pay him, and because we pay him, that doesn't absolve us of our responsibilities. Who says he should be know the Bible the best, or have the most Bible studies? And if you can create that kind of a culture, then the church can't help but to grow. And I think a lot of places have just depended on like a hierarchy of, well, this guy does that, and they're not evangelistic. Because I think when I speak a lot of places, one thing I'll ask sometimes is, when's the last time you had a Bible study? And that one can hurt, so be careful with that one sometimes, but although it's needed. But I'll ask sometimes, did you grow up seeing your parents do Bible studies in your home? Mm-hmm. And the people that are soul winners now, the answer is yes. And the ones who have never had a Bible study, the answer is no. Yeah. So that's why it's important for us to try to have Bible studies in our home. One reason to make that normal for our kids. But I think churches have just become too comfortable. And you think about when Joshua was going into the promised land, he tells them, you're going to live in homes you didn't build, eat from gardens you didn't plant. Mm-hmm. If you stay faithful, you'll keep that. And a lot of us are in spiritual homes we didn't build, eating from spiritual gardens we didn't plant. We have beautiful church buildings because our grandparents and their parents were willing to sell and donate and build and have Bible studies. Some of the older members at our congregation, their conversion story is a guy came through town showing Jewel Miller film strips in 2 or 3 rows at church. Their whole family is there because a guy did that. Yeah. Why do you do that? Yeah. He wasn't on staff anywhere. Yeah. He loved the Lord and the church, and he wanted to share the gospel. And so if we can get people re-engaged, realizing this isn't something we can outsource, in personal evangelism is personal, right? We can do that. And, it's interesting, denominations, you can see exact trends in their stats. And the Church of Christ is harder because we have no headquarters. Right. Get a count of how many people worshiped in a Church of Christ on Sunday. You can't. Yeah. And so it's hard to track some of that, but you do see anecdotally a lot of things growing, a lot of things closing. And I think the truth is those that will work right now are growing. Yeah. There is huge opportunities. You know how it is on a college campus. Yeah, there's a lot of liberalism and disdain for God, but there's also a lot of really interested people. Yeah. And so I think if we can not believe the devil's lie that nobody wants the truth, right, and we can take it, we'll grow. If we won't, we'll close. Yeah. I'm loving where you're going with this. It's something I've been talking to this body here about. As a matter of fact, our vision for the year is the Ephesians 4, equipping the saints to do the work. That's awesome. But because of this very reason, I think the paradigm that so many people have is we pay a preacher, that's his job to evangelize. Why would I do that? And I have a hard time wrestling with where that ends up from a end-of-life scenario when you look back and you reflect on your life. And for anybody, any member, this goes to anybody listening to this show or watching this show, when you reflect, if you're a Christian and you reflect on your life and you realize that you're about to pass into eternity and you have not had one Bible study and you have not brought one person to Christ, that should be a scary thing. I'm not making any judgments on that. I'm just saying from the standpoint of the Great Commission and what Jesus' last words were here on this earth is go and make disciples. Go tell them about me. Go tell them the story. Go tell them God's love story. Go tell them why I came. That is one of our sole purposes here on this earth.
And so we're hitting into some just extremely, I think, essential things that I hope is a reawakening for a lot of members across the Church of Christ, because we used to be on fire.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a situation where you had the majority of Christian spectators. What you had was a majority of Christian participants working the God story of love and sharing that with the world. And
yeah, absolutely. And I see so many churches that have doubled, have tripled, have gone more than that. I know a congregation that's gone from 800 to 1,300, and it's not because they brought in theatrics. It's because they reshifted their focus. I know churches that were like, I think we're going to close. They reevaluated, and they went up, and they're growing. They've tripled. Sometimes people call me, and they're negative about it. I'm like, literally, I'll give you 10 or 20 cell phone numbers. Just spend a day, take a day off work or use a Saturday and call these guys. And if you don't feel like you could run through a brick wall for evangelism afterwards, you're dead because they're only excuses, not real reasons.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is our average member, it's like saying learn Arabic. Oh, okay, the Bible commands me to learn Arabic, but I don't know how because nobody in my family speaks it. Nobody at church speaks it. Well, I think personal evangelism is like that too. You can preach a great message about it and people say, amen, that was a good lesson. Yeah. But they need to see their leadership doing it. Yeah. They need to be the silent partner in Bible studies. You're not going to go from I've never led one to I baptized 5 people.
Right.
You got to be the silent partner, but that requires mentorship and discipleship of you.
Yeah.
So it's a process, I think. But if we'll start the process, it won't take long. It'll work.
Yeah. Great point. And I think that it hits on something. A lot of people are just scared because they don't know how. They haven't been given the resources, and somewhere along the way, I have to place the blame. Not to place blame, but something happened. Clearly something happened. And I think leaderships need to wake up and go, are we doing what the Bible says about, are we equipping the saints? Do we have a program here at the church that emphasizes the fact that part of our main job as elders, as leaders, is to make sure that our membership understands you need to be doing this, and here's how you do it. And somewhere along the way, we got away. I don't know if it's a generational thing, but we got away from that.
Yeah, and I think, do you know how to get to my house?
In Rome, Georgia?
Yeah.
No, it'd be
just
weird
go to Rome and ask for me.
Okay.
But so you're going to have a hard time telling somebody to do that. And so I think that's why leadership is so important. And I just turned 41. I'm a deacon, and hopefully I'll be an elder one day. So at some point, it's not leadership, it's leadership,
Yeah.
So I'm very well aware of that, and I don't want to beat down anybody that's in leadership, but we have to realize, okay, if our leaders are not evangelistic, then there's no way the members can be, because you're asking them to go somewhere you don't know how to get to.
Right.
And so I think if the leadership in churches would focus on that primarily, grow in that, and be in Bible studies all the time, I think the church would just naturally follow.
Is there a good way to do that? Is there something that would not be so daunting? Like we're taking like a subjective thought process and we're putting objective steps to it. In your experience, is there a right place to start with that?
Yeah, so our School of Evangelism will go in and they'll kind of triage where a congregation is. Mm-hmm. And at first we'd same message every church, but you realize quickly not everybody's some people are on life support and some people are already booming.
Yeah.
So you don't want to stunt their growth or give them Greek, So I think you triage the situation and see where you're at. And we have a plan. You don't really need necessarily a program, but you do need a plan. And so we've mapped something out over the past couple of years that is on evangelism.housetohouse.com. And it's kind of a plan of where a church can start. So you may look at it and say, okay, we're here or we're here. But yeah, I think it's just taking some self-evaluation, having those conversations. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And what steps can we take to get better? And for me, one thing that's changed my life the past 5 years, financially and evangelistically, is I have mentors in the areas I want to improve in, and I speak to them all the time. So I know a guy, he's doing a community Bible study. If you've ever been to the middle of nowhere, it's like 20 minutes past that.
Okay.
And he started with 30 non-Christians coming every Thursday, and now he's up to mid-60s in less than a year.
Okay.
And he's baptized 5 or so of those. I know a guy who was working out at the Y, and he just asked them, what do you guys do to put the C in this place? And they said, oh, nothing. We've been talking about that. You have a suggestion? And they hired him to be their chaplain and get paid to do Bible studies on Thursday night. And he converted a guy who has since converted 2 guys just because he was at the Y working out and said, YMC. So I think just looking about where you're at and taking the opportunities that are there. We have a plan and a program and material, and they're very helpful, but you don't necessarily have to have that as long as you have the plan to do something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think if you have a leader or preacher who, whatever their favorite thing or their hobby horse is, the church really usually gets caught up in that.
Right.
Well, if we make our hobby horse and our thing soul winning, everybody else is going to get caught up. Because if you're bringing and baptizing and sending out people, person after person, don't you think the congregation is going to say, "Man, how's he doing that? I could do that. You know, I'm smarter than Craig. I could do this if he can."
Absolutely.
You know, but so it's a hard answer. It depends on the church, but I think just realizing your strengths and weaknesses and where you are. Am I ready to run or do I need to walk? Can I talk to people who have done this? We have a church in Pittsburgh that's trying to grow, and they called me and said, "Who can we talk to?" But they're in a urban setting. So we have a church that a guy's baptized a ton, and he's a great soul winner in the Baltimore area. So they talk every week on Zoom. It's like they can't get to where they don't even know the directions. Yeah. They don't even know the questions to ask, so they're talking to someone who does. So I think finding someone who's been successful, learning from them, and then just putting yourself out there and trying. Are we even trying? Are we talking about it? Is helpful.
So I have a campus ministry background, and as I listen and process everything that you've said, one of the things that keeps coming into my mind is this idea that talking to people about Jesus, as hungry as the world is, a lot of people are off-put by people going to evangelize, because a lot of people now, especially from the younger generations, thinks that that's offensive. You know, that we're crossing some sort of personal boundary, that we don't need to be getting into people's lives in that way, because we definitely don't want to offend, and we definitely want to show that we're tolerant of everybody, and because Christians should love everybody and all of that. And so it as I reflect on this, I read by author Joe Beam. He recently put a post out there, and I'm going to read it, and then I want to see what your feedback is on this. So this is a author Joe Beam. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. Anyway, this is what he put. He said, "Years ago, when I abandoned God and embraced sin, several Christians demonstrated their loving like Jesus," in quotes, "by affirming my right to make my own choices, rallying around me as a caring, non-judgmental support system, and never once confronting my sin, or even applying that my adultery, drunkenness, and the like were sin. If someone actually brought up any passage about sin, judgment, or repentance, they were quickly chastised as using outdated scare tactics, having no comprehension of true love, aligning themselves with judgmental right-wing legalists, or being so spiritually immature that they just don't understand. Thank God that another group of Christians, though very few in number, treated me with love, respect, and kindness. However, these Christ followers didn't hesitate to remind me of the will of God that I'd abandoned. They genuinely listened to me, but never affirmed nor tolerated my selfish claim that God is so gracious that He was fine with whatever I believed, desired, or did. The second group cared far more for my eternal life than whether I liked them or not. A couple of times I cursed vehemently as I demanded some of those folks mind their own business and leave me alone." And he goes on further to just discuss this contrast between a group of Christians, well-meaning, but were absolutely not going to confront his sin issues. They loved him, but they weren't going to call him out on his sin issues. While another group of Christians, and he says that, but they were very few, actually were willing to call him out and say, as he fired back at him and got defensive, he's like, they would say, "Clearly you're having a bad day. We'll check back with you in a week or so." And he said, and they did check back with me. Their story hadn't changed. They loved me. They were praying for me. They wanted to sit with me. They wanted to walk beside me, but they still didn't support my sin. And so he concludes this by saying, in the end, it's because of that second group who cared but didn't hide the truth, that weren't afraid to confront my sin and say what I was doing was wrong. It was those people that truly loved me and brought me back to Christ, versus the Christian who didn't want to get into that territory because they didn't want to offend. They wanted to show tolerance. Are we caught up in that kind of culture right now? And I don't know, broad stroke there.
Yeah. I think so, and I think it's challenging too, because you have Christians all over the spectrum with different approaches to it. So some think, I don't want to say something that's wrong, so I won't ever say anything. And then you have some people who don't have any kind of a filter or governor on anything they ever say or do, and you know where you stand with them all the time. And Proverbs says that's a fool. Yeah. And so the truth, I would imagine, would lie somewhere in between. And I think a lot of times we don't do these things just because we don't know how to interact with people. We don't know how to talk. And we're probably not getting enough reps at it. Yeah. Like, you didn't come out of the womb good at a sport or at business or with girls or with whatever. Experience helps in those things. Like, Malcolm Gladwell has, what is the 10,000 hour rule or something, but it's just about getting reps in. And so a lot of times we don't know how to turn just the natural conversation of the waitress or the gas station attendant to spiritual matters because we've never set that as a goal. We haven't seen people do it, and we haven't tried it. So there is a way to do this. I don't have that big of a problem with it. But it's not because I'm something special, because I used to be terrible at it. Yeah. But I set it as a goal, and I've spent time with people who are good at it. One of my coworkers, Rod, he can go into the gas station and come out with a Bible study. And I did a gospel meeting for a church in Rome on Monday and Tuesday. And Monday night I saw a guy shooting. There's a nice little basketball park, but nobody ever plays. Mm-hmm. But I saw a guy shooting, and I said, tomorrow night, if I come by, I'm going to stop. I'm going to bring my shoes, and I'm going to shoot with that guy. Yeah. Well, I got out last night, and he's shooting. So I pulled up to him and rolled down my window and said, hey, can I shoot with you? And he was like, what? And I was like, can I shoot with you? And he's like, yeah. So I got out in my dress clothes, and we shot for a while, and then I changed into my shoes, and we played one-on-one. His name's Elvin. I got his phone number. Like, a few years ago, that would have been like a very awkward. I probably wouldn't have done it because I was scared, But now it was like the easiest thing in the world. And he's like, hey, get my number. I got his number. We've texted back and forth. And there's a guy, Norris Cole, who won 2 championships with LeBron, who did a lesson for us at PTP. I'm going to send this guy his lesson. I was waiting to the conversation to get to a certain point. But anyway, it's like, I don't know what will happen with that guy. Yeah. Hopefully I come back in a couple years and tell you and he's with me or something, you know? Yeah. But that kind of thing is natural now because I've spent time with Rod, who is so good at it. Then I'm like, oh, well, shoot, I could say that in the conversation. I'll just say that next time. And so you learn. And there's a proverb, too, that says, I can't go in the streets today because there's a line I might get killed. Mm-hmm. And it's just an excuse to not go do it. Yeah. But Christianity shouldn't be a very safe thing. Yeah. It's not like other countries where, like in China, if you were evangelizing on the streets, you'd get sent home. Yeah. You wouldn't get killed at the time, but you'd get sent back to your country and you couldn't come back. Right. We're not that. But a Christian who says, well, someone might be mean to me, or it might be awkward. Well, that's kind of part of what we signed up for is being uncomfortable. I heard somebody say, we'll be uncomfortable so you don't have to, So I think a lot of people they're just not showing any effort to win people like that. And they're afraid they're going to hurt somebody's feelings, or they're afraid, I think really, that they're going to hurt that person's feelings, and it's going to make it hard on them.
I mean, certainly fear is a big part of the hesitation for a lot of people to get out there and try to set up a study where they can, form a relationship with a person to the point where they can ask them, to have a study or maybe do this. So what do we say to the people that are like, you know what? I mean, honestly, if I stop and I think about it, Matt, that's not the talent that God gave me. I'm just not, my personality is not the kind of person that I'm going to go up to a person and try to get to know them to the point where I can have a Bible study with them. Sure. And so, I mean, are you saying that I'm, less of a Christian because of that? I mean, so how do we wrestle with that? Because if what I hear you saying is we each have that responsibility, and you know what? It is scary and it is hard, and you are going to be putting yourself out of your comfort zone. And sorry that this sounds rude, but you need to get over it.
Yeah. Well, so the Bible is very clear. Not everybody has the same talent, and the foot doesn't say to the eye this and that kind of thing. Right. But the amount to which I hear that's not my talent. Yeah. Did God give us anybody with that talent? Yeah. So it's a disproportionate amount of, that's not for me. So I do think for most people it is. Get over it and do it anyway. Now you may never be the lead Bible study person or the preacher, but that doesn't mean that you can't be involved in the process. Like, one thing I've learned the past few years is there are bringers, keepers, and teachers. And our college group is great bringers right now. Mm-hmm. And most of them are not quite yet to the point that they're very good teachers. And their following up and communicating skills are just okay. So keeper is kind of iffy. Yeah. But I work in an office with one guy, and everybody else I work with is digitally, and he's a member of the church. My wife homeschools. She's a member of the church. And how am I going to meet non-Christians? I have to be very intentional about it. I have to pull over and ask them to play basketball. Right. But them bringing people to our college group, which is something I've started working with, is great. You've brought me the people. Now I can do the teaching and I can do the keeping. And so not everybody has to do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. If we're all teachers but there are no bringers or keepers, then what's the point? Yeah. Right? So I think everybody should most people's first reaction is, oh, I couldn't preach. My first sermon was terrible.
Yeah.
Nobody said good job.
Yeah.
They said, well, you tried, and I'm not saying it's great now, but at least people don't say, well, you tried,
Yeah.
So anything that you're uncomfortable with, God will be with you through that. And I know he says make disciples. He also says I'll be with you to the end of the world.
Right.
So you have divine help as you're doing what God has asked you to do.
Well, it reminds me of, the saying, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something else with the word intentional that I think, man, as Christians, we're completely missing the boat on that. How many of us actually pray for God to put people in our lives that we can mission to, that we can evangelize? Because I think if we have that mindset and we start praying for that and we start, saying, okay, God, you know that I'm not qualified to do this. I have zero talents in this area, but I understand I need to be doing something because I don't want to stand before you one day in judgment when you say, did you tell anybody about my son? And I don't want to have to stand before him and say, nope, I didn't tell him. I thought about it. My intentions were good, but you know what? That really wasn't my talent. So I think we need to be thinking in terms of, you know what? I may not be good at that. I may not have the talent for that, but I'm gonna be praying and I'm gonna be asking God, hey, help me be more intentional. Put those people in my life. I don't think that guy was randomly playing basketball. You said, hey, I'm gonna stop by the next day if he's there playing, and he was there playing, right? So is that something that we need to be thinking about more as Christians? Is being more intentional with our mission mindset?
Yeah, I don't think you could tell me a person would pray a great prayer like what you just said every day, and the answer from God is going to be no. Things are going to change in that person's life. People are going to get sent that aren't, oh, I only speak Arabic and I'm a Muslim,
mm-hmm.
or I'm an atheist and I'm gay.
Yeah,
like you pray that prayer. Yeah, you'll have people like that, and thankful for those opportunities too. But you're going to find somebody that you're well suited for,
right?
Because God is working these things out for His good.
And that's a great, people that struggle with their faith. I tell them, I'm like, pray for opportunities to talk to other people about Jesus, and it's amazing how quickly not only does that happen, but how well suited you are to deal with the issues that because like, wow, I've struggled with that very thing. I kind of know what I'm talking about here. I can really help this person. And you begin to realize this isn't a coincidence. God is actually here working in my life. And so that, as far as a faith building thing, it kind of two birds with one stone sort of.
Oh yeah.
deal.
I've prayed before something and it immediately happened and I was shocked by it.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with me?
Right.
I prayed for rain, take an umbrella, but we're like that sometimes. We pray for it and God supplies it. And then I have been surprised in the past. I'm trying to be better about that. But yeah, I think you're right. It's like looking for the opportunity is the biggest part of it. God's going to do His part. He's given us His word, and He's going to send people to help us and use providence to send people. And so, if we'll look for the opportunity, I think that it'll be there.
Do you think that, as we're talking about mission and having a mission mindset and being more evangelistic, being more intentional about being disciple makers, is America the next great mission field? Are we going to have people that our great grandfathers went to Africa and turned into Christians, and they're the ones coming back to America now to teach us about Christ?
I don't know. And I know people will always kind of look down on the idea that the church is in decline and say things. Well, it is interesting that sometimes the people that say that have a product or a plan to sell you.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
We don't view ourselves that same way because it would be great if nobody needed any of the things that we do, Yeah. And so we would just go on to, okay, well, what does the church need now? But we try to look at statistics and be balanced, knowing that not all churches report everything, but also from what we see, it does look like statistically there's a decline. But some people are like, oh, no, everything's fine. And I think just because the church the gates of Hades will never prevail against the church, and there will always be the church and always has been, that doesn't mean there will be one in your city.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean there will be one in even your state. So eventually, we could definitely get to a point like that. I don't know that we're on track for that because there's so many good Christians, and in a lot of areas, I'm really seeing the church grow.
Yeah.
But India and Africa, the church is growing like crazy. Mm-hmm. So it would not shock me. I did a lesson at PTP in Branson a couple months ago to teenagers, and that's the very scenario I set forth is a mission group is looking for a place to go. They pick a place, and then they come in, and it said there's no churches in the state, or there's no churches in this area, and the first sign they see says, "Welcome to Atlanta." And then I talk about how if you guys don't start getting evangelistic and bringing your friends before they have all this spiritual and addiction baggage, then that could be a reality. I don't personally think it'll get to that. But if it did, it wouldn't shock me in some ways. You go long enough down the road.
My experience, it's been, I don't have any problem getting a group of people that are willing to do a short-term mission trip somewhere overseas. And they don't mind having Bible studies with these people and trying to get a same group or another group together to have that same mission mindset, but only here in America. It's much harder to build a team to do that. Why is that? Or why are we scared to evangelize our own people when you've mentioned it? I mean, the field is ripe here in America, and people are just as hungry here to hear about Jesus as they are in Africa or Central America. Yet we seem to be fielding people all the time for foreign ministries, and they're willing to do that, but we don't have that same zeal and that same vigor to do it right here at home in our backyard.
Yeah, thankfully I am seeing a lot of that, like a turn on that. But I think most people struggle with that because it's like door knocking, which I'm a fan of. I think the only thing that doesn't work is not working. So I don't think door knocking is going to save 1 million people from one church, but I think it can be a good tool. But the reason people don't like things like that is, or I'm sorry, let me say this. Maybe the reason people like to do that once a year is they can say, today is evangelism day. Mm-hmm. Or a mission trip, they can say it's evangelism week. We're going over there. We go over there, and that's where we do evangelism. But the harder mindset of mission-mindedness is, it's evangelism everywhere.
Yeah.
Like while I'm here, part of what I hope to do is fire you up as you're firing me up.
Yeah.
And to get to know your sons and the other members that are here. And on my PowerPoint, I list my Facebook link, my email, and my cell phone number. And I want people to connect with me. If there's anything I said that somebody wants to talk about more, or if I was wrong about something. So same thing when we go to a restaurant later. If we go to a restaurant, we started, I don't know who gave me this idea. Rob Young in Long Island Church of Christ in New York. That's a great church, 350 members. Almost all of them are first generation. Their story is crazy. But they pray for their waitress. Hey, we're going to pray for our food. Is there anything we can pray for you about? And sometimes people are indifferent. Sometimes they share, but sometimes they break down crying when you do that.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm still not great. I'm working on it, but I'm trying to view every interaction that I have as mission work. And it's just, it's a mindset change, and it's taking it out of the box of evangelism, worship, recreation. Mm-hmm. And it's just letting evangelism spread through all of those things.
Yeah. I love that. When you say door knocking, it brings a response to a lot of people. It's just an automatic, door knocking. I would like the audience listening to this to understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think you stopping to play ball with Elvin. Is that what you said his name was?
Yeah.
Is that not door knocking?
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so we have in our mindset that door knocking can only be on that one time we go out a year and knock on people's door, and we might have 2 or 3 people that are like, yeah, sure, here's, where, 99 out of the 100 doors are people like, don't bother me or whatever. And so people get a bad taste in their mouth. We need to stop boxing door knocking into that type of visual. It needs to be you door knock every day. If you're at the grocery store, and praying for those opportunities. I think all of that stuff kind of goes hand in hand. All right, so what I want to do here is to ask you, because I like the perspective that you're bringing. You've got all of these different stories that I think more than most guests, you have a large perspective on kind of the vibe of what's going on across a larger part of geographical area. What are you really excited about for the church in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? And what concerns do you have for the church next 5 to 10 years, based on everything that you see, where you travel, people you talk to?
Sure. So excited. I feel like a lot of the younger generation is fixing some of the things the one above it got wrong. Now, the flip side of this is that they'll get wrong some of the things that generation got right. Yeah. I think that happens. So I think that a lot of people my age, and especially down to 20 or so, grew up where they never saw their parents do a Bible study, and they're realizing that's not okay. Yeah. And so a lot of the college students that I'm with are really working on fixing that and working on evangelizing. And I see that a lot of places I go that's a refocus, not just a buzzword, like here's the evangelism sermon for the year.
Yeah.
But a lot of places, especially in 40 to 20, I'm seeing people want to be more like Acts chapter 2, together daily, sacrificing and sharing. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes the world will critique us, and some of the times the critique is true. You know, Pink Floyd has a song about money, and then it says, well, but they're not giving any away. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that's a fair critique if we don't. Yeah. The early church was made fun of for how they helped the poor. Like, you guys are just giving stuff away. Right. And they took it so serious they eventually quit in some places. So I think one thing I'm seeing is the 40 to 20 range, getting some of that energy for an Acts 2 type religion where they're together more and they are sacrificing and they are evangelizing. That's one thing I'm excited about. One thing I'm excited about is the interest in other people in the world. When I helped organize a door knocking day, and we started in 2019, and so I read everybody that door knocks and submits reports, and I look at all their pictures. And one thing you would see is in Africa, they would knock 8 doors. Like, 8 doors? That's weak. Oh, but they were at each house for 2 hours. So they door knocked longer than we were. That's because people actually let them in. Yeah. Okay, well, at the beginning of that in this country, it was like a couple minutes per door. But that average, the number of doors being knocked is going down, even though the number of knockers we've got involved is going up. And what I'm seeing from that is people are actually letting them in, or they're actually standing. So I think interest levels have grown. That's one thing I'm excited about. I think there's a lot of great podcasts like this one that have on guests, and you talk through some of these issues, and then people listen to them, and they can put some stuff to work. There's never been a greater time to access good content and good help.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times I'll listen to a speaker, like I've listened to David Shannon, for example, and formed a friendship with him just because of how successful he's been in keeping doctrinal matters a priority, but also being evangelistic, but also being authentic in who he is because he's a good man. Yeah. But you can listen to people, and then you can correspond with them, and you can say, hey, here's my situation. What would you do? Right. And you can get advice. So those are things to me that are really exciting. So I think it's like a John 4 type moment, like literally just open your eyes because the fields are wide unto harvest.
Right, right.
And whatever your strength is, you can find somebody who's already in the brotherhood doing it well, and you can learn from them. So those are some things that concern me are some things we touched on already is some of the older generation especially, but in every generation, just thinking things are good when they're just not that good sometimes. Right. Yeah. You know, we look healthy, but we're not that healthy, and we're actually on a downward trend. You know, it's easy for us to keep the world out in certain ways, but unknowingly let them in. So, for example, our attitude. We may not let instruments into the service, but we have as bad an attitude as someone else, right? Yeah. So I think the same is true of doctrinal issues as well. I think we can water down the uniqueness of the New Testament church, and we can compromise either in doctrine or in application of that doctrine. Yeah. So that's something that concerns me is some places you go, they haven't helped anybody. We help people here, prove it. Right. And they're nothing. But then some places you go, it's like that's all they talk about. And we don't talk anything about Ephesians 4 or Acts chapter 2 or any of these specifics. And so it scares me that we'll lean too far to one side or to the other instead of caring both about doctrine and application of it.
Yeah. Great comments. Man, I've enjoyed talking to you, Matt. This has been
great.
I mean, I wish we didn't have time caps because there's 3 or 4 things that I would love to pursue with you, especially some of the doctrinal stuff and just, you know, how we grapple with that. But unfortunately, we are out of time.
That's how it works.
Yep, it does. So listen up. I say this at the end of every show. Give us feedback. I want to be better at doing this. I want to be relevant. I want to be topics that are going to resonate with you guys. So I can't do that unless I get feedback from you, and some of you have given me feedback, and I appreciate that. Need more of it. If you're watching this on YouTube, click that subscribe button so you will be updated anytime we put a new show up there. I appreciate that. Also, I want to plug Ministry League. They've picked up this podcast, and that is such a, house to house, heart to heart. Clearly, there's a lot of resources there for churches to use and leaders to use. Ministry League is another great place to go to access just a ton of really good content and resources, lots of good podcasts, including this one is on there. So, look Ministry League up. We're going to put their QR code at the bottom of this. If you're you just want to snap a picture of that.
Yeah, and I tell everybody, download Blue Letter Bible. You don't have to be a Greek scholar. You can look it up for free, and download Ministry League because they've got podcasts, and then they've got the songbook on there. So everybody I talk to very often has Ministry League app on their phone.
Yeah, I think that when I was talking to Paul Sperling, they've got over 100,000 downloads now on that, which is awesome and incredible. I always like to close out the show with the guest reading one of their favorite verses. I don't know what you're going to read, but or recite. So I'm going to let you do that now, Matt.
Starting Genesis 1. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what I remember.
So one of my favorites, and we have this, one of my coworkers, Kelly Sewell, painted this and put it on a canvas, and we have it framed in our in our dining room. And it's Acts 2:44. All that believed were together and had all things in common. And I remember as a kid first reading that and thinking that they all agreed on everything or had the same favorite food or whatever. Yeah. But then you continue to understand, and then chapter 4 talks about it was as if there was a need, someone would supply it. Yeah. And I love that idea because the things that we have, the blessings we've been given, are not just for us, but they're for others. Abraham, Genesis 12 says, was blessed to be a blessing. And so it should be for the Christians. We can enjoy the things we have, but ultimately they're not ours, they're God's, and so we should share them with each other. Awesome. Great thoughts. Until our next podcast of The Lion, the Way, and the War, be kind to one another, love one another, and remember that the Creator of the universe loved you so much that He gave up His only Son for you. Have a blessed day. That was fun, man.